Okay, now let's take the case of a while loop. So while loop is one of the conditional control flow statement that generally used when there is an iterative process of particular kind of an operation. So for here, what example? In this case, we have first analyzed what is basically the syntax of a while loop, and after that we can take the example of a factorial calculation using a while loop. So basically, the structure of a while loop has an initiation that is actually external to the loop, and it starts with the initialization part, then followed by the while keyword, and within the bracket we keep the boolean condition, and within the curly bracket actually we have the conditional logic that follows, and for this case it is factor is equal to factor, and finally before we give the closing of the curly brackets there is an iterative process happening over here. This is how the structure of a while loop is defined. Now let us take the case of the calculation of a factorial of a number by making use of the while loop. Now what are the basic requirements of factorial? So first we had to make a declaration of an quantity called I, then the number, then the fact for which we need to calculate the factorial. And for this case the fact itself, if number is an entry that will be determining the factorial to be calculated, and fact is one of the parameters that is needed for the calculation process. Now let us take the case of a constant write-line statement. So here this is actually constant write-line method is actually asking the compiler to asking the friendly user person to enter some values. So here the number is the option given, and number is a quantity by means of which the compiler will be accepting and knowing that for which number we need to calculate the factorial. So here that particular number is this number, and in.parse is actually the conversion method here, and followed by the constant readline method. And the constant readline method is the method by means of which the compiler accepts any term within its own process of calculation of the any of the logics. Now here what happens is that now the in.parse is actually converting the entry of a string quantity, and that strictly the actual number should be an int. Why this int parse conversion required is that the compiler cannot implicitly understand this particular number int to be a number. So number to be an int. So this int.parse is the method that actually helps the compiler to make the understanding process of being that we have entered an int quantity. So this is just so it's known as an explicit casting process because it does not happen implicitly. Now here initially the fact has to be defined to be 1, and based on the calculation of the values, what happens is that fact equal to factor I, and I will be the number. So initially the I will take the iterative process from 1, then in the next step I will become 2, then I will become 3, I will become 4, I will become 5, and I will become 5 depending on the number. So number is actually 5, that is why the I is getting the last number as 5. So in this way the flow of data is from the right hand side to the left hand side of the equal to sign, and initially what happens is the fact is carried to be 1, so 1 into 1 happens, then the resulting value is 1, that goes to the fact, and then the next value for fact gets multiplied, fact that's initially 1 gets multiplied with 2 because there's an iterative process of the I happening here. So I will get iterated to 2, and the 2 into 1 will take the multiplication process 2, and fact will become 2, and in the next term what happens is that there is an iterational process of I, the I becomes 3. So initially the fact is 2, to 2 into 3 is 6, the fact happens to be 6, and when the fact happens to be 6, then iteration process still happens, and I takes the value 3. So it goes on happening, calculating like that. So it is just a multiplication of the iterative process of 1 starting with the letter 1, then 1 into 2, then 2 into 3, then 3 into 4, then 4 into 5. The entire thing goes on multiplying till the I reaches the fact value reaches the number for which we have entered. So in that way we get the fact multiplication of the respective number with an iterative process. So here that is what the factorial initially means. So in the fact has to be initialized to 1 because the multiplication of 0 is entirely becomes 0. So fact has to be divided by fact to be 1 here initially. Now once the loop is exiting, we get the entire result of the entire answers. So here the constant write-line method is a labeling process by means of which we get the factorial answers. So within the curly brackets we have to put within the round brackets we have to put after concatenating operator followed by the label, we have to enclose the fact value. The fact value is no more the 1 here, it becomes 1 into 2, then 2 followed by then the successive multiplication process till the fact reaches the value 5. So hence it will become the multiplication process of 1 into 2, then 2 into 3, then 3 into 4, then 4 into 5. So altogether it will give you 120 as answer. And the constant write-line method is just a method name, just to pause the event. So since the compiler is very fast, it will just show the answer and it will disappear. So in order to avoid that, we need to produce the consolidated line method. And now so let us give build operation and see whether there is any comparison errors. So now we have seen that it will succeed. That means that there is free of all the compatibility issues, and the CLS and the command language runtime does not find any errors. That means it's an error-free code. Now let us give a start. So it's asking for the number for which you want to calculate the factorial. So let's give it as 5. So and we get exactly as this 120. Then this is how the factorial of a number is being calculated. Now let us take the second case when we can give a number to be 6. So this additionally this is 6 into 5. So it will be 120 into 6 will be the last addition process, multiplication process. So 120 into 6 is 720. So this is how the factorial works. Factorial calculation with while loop works.